That's the next best 30 minutes of your life. Have a cigar.
What's the first best?
This is just
Everything
the next
else.
best.
What's the first best?
Anything
Join
else?
us. We get together with a few guys every Tuesday, and for 30 minutes we open up the Word and we just walk right through it while eating a little something, having a great cigar. Kind of breaks up our week, and it's just kind of to give you a little idea of what holy smokes are like, where guys go an hour and a half and we really dig deep into the Word, and you can actually finish a cigar during that amount of time, right? So, in fact, just a side note, people always say, "Hey, how long is Holy Smoke? How long?" Well, I want to go. How long is it? And we say it's the length of a cigar, unless you're
Unless you're a petite cigars.
yeah. So anyway, this is only 30 minutes, so we'll be finishing off camera. Devin will be checking in occasionally and see if you got questions. So join in. Also share this on your wall and to your friends. Go ahead and comment, and we'll check back all during the week. So that's it. These are the guys. These are who showed up for chili cheese dogs and corn dogs today.
Well, if you had advertised that we were going to have wiener schnitzel corn dogs, this place would have been overrun with people.
Oh my gosh! I would expect that if you said in and
Mamma
out.
Mia's, right?
Well, Mamma
I like
Mia.
In and Out too a lot.
In and out. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, hey, so we're in Nehemiah, and we're just marching right through, and I think they've started building the perimeter wall, and we're
Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. So let's roll.
All right. So when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. So just the reality is some people want you to succeed. And this whole thing is, there's, actually 3 chapters that talk about opposition. This one is the opposition from the outside. The next one is opposition from the inside. And then, it all kind of is tied into spiritual opposition. So I just thought, before we get going any further, just ask this question. Have you ever fought against an enemy and God gave you the victory? Because that's the end result here. God gave them the victory. So have you ever fought against an enemy and God gave you the victory? And if so, tell us the story.
Wow. This is for you guys online too. Type it in there and we'll watch for it. Have you fought against an enemy? I don't even like enemies. To fight against them, I have to identify that it's
right.
I don't like run away, but man, I like everyone to.
Can we all be friends?
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah, that's right.
And God gave you the victory. Anyone got an example?
Fantasy football every week. Except Scott seems to always pull one out. I don't know how.
Always in the end, comes my way for whatever
Because
reason.
the 1 year where he puts everything into the Vikings every year. This
He
year they're
picks it.
actually performing.
He
That's
picks
true.
it and lets it run its course.
His broken clock is currently right this year with the Vikings.
For now.
So
So I kind of have one with my
Yeah.
daughter. My daughter was in her early 20s, was in a difficult place with abuse. I've told the story a few times. Abusive boyfriend and just lost. Reminds me of a couple of friends we have in our group, in our HolySmoke group, that have kids that are kind of lost. Well, I just had a conversation, and so I went in long fast, lots of prayer, crisis with both sides of our family. It was a big to-do for a bunch of years. Her life was threatened at one point. Just last week, conversation with her. She's in an amazing place. Like everything, like how's your mid-20 daughter doing or kid doing? And every check she could do, she did. She's just in a fantastic place. So that is, it could have been death, could have been drugs, sucked into these different avenues. But instead, God, over time, it didn't happen fast, but over time has rescued her, and now it looks like she's on a great path. So that I would have to credit God with that victory.
it is pretty cool to be older I mean, I can't imagine being your guys' age.
Oh, yeah.
How
Well,
much?
thanks.
Yeah,
It's so wonderful.
Bill and I are the same age, and Frank, we're the same.
I can imagine it. It just
He can imagine it. But I mean, seriously, we get to look back and see, like Frank said, over time, you know, God was there and doing stuff and then equipping us to what he's got us in the middle of doing right now. And you know, for each of us.
Sure.
I think he's still working on equipping Frank here lately, though,
For
with the job,
For sure.
job. But you know, it builds character.
Still a work in progress.
Builds character.
My whole career is a work in
Yeah.
progress. So,
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting. I was thinking the other day, if I was to take an apple seed right out of an apple core, hand it to somebody and say, "This is an apple orchard,"
Orchard. Oh,
right? This is an orchard of apples with one seed. Well, certainly it can be with the right work and the right replanting and the right nurturing. And you take seeds from each apple, you replant them, and not pretty soon, over time, you have 20 acres of apples and big harvests every fall. But with the perspective of maturity, you can see that path. With the perspective, many times with the perspective of youth, it's all, well, what the hell is this going to do for me, right? I need to eat an apple. You know, you could see the wisdom in it.
Multiplied.
exponential.
compound interest.
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm waiting for the entrepreneur comment from Frank. Feels like every week exponential growth through the apple seeds.
I mean, it's right in the Bible.
Well,
Just
you
don't
can-
say,
you-
just
there.
don't use residual income. If I hear residual income one more time,
Passive.
I actually
Passive
said it today before you
passive.
got here.
What's
I
the
actually said
thing
those
going on
words.
right in
you said the words today. That's so
Well,
funny.
no, here it is.
There's always some
15
somebody
minutes
who wants
before you got here.
some multi-level marketing thing. Are you interested in making residual income? No, I'm
It's
not.
passive. The trees do it themselves.
I tell them all the time. I told Devin the other day, I go, look, Devin, what's the secret to wealth? He looks at me, I go, man, I've told you this your whole life.
I knew that.
And what did you tell them? Passive residual growth.
I said, no, you spend less than you make and you invest the rest.
Right.
And you do that over a long period of time.
Sure.
That's the secret.
I've played that rich dad board. It's
So anyway,
Nehemiah.
what's the Bible say?
Throw in some leverage.
Steady
You're right.
plodding leads to prosperity.
Right.
Hasty speculation leads to
Right.
death, actually.
So back to this.
No, we're on this.
Oh, are we on this?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure where we are.
This is
Yeah.
not
I think I
a
took us
rabbit
down a
trail.
path. I
I was
said
having
the
a
whole
hard time.
residual income thing, and then
You did. You screwed us
it was
up
my fault.
entirely.
So I'm gonna bring us back on track.
Yes. So.
So when have you ever experienced, fought against an enemy and God gave you the victory? And I had that experience. I was going through a divorce, and there was one. Because this is public, I'm not going to give names or
No, get
even
in.
This is streaming to 5 platforms.
right, or relationships. I'm basically going to
The
say
3 people watching it
There
might
was a
know what you're
person.
talking about.
who wanted me to die. I mean, basically wanted me to be destroyed.
Just one person
Well,
that you know of.
no, there's probably 3.
Oh.
That's a lesser number than currently though. So
Yeah. This is like watching the stock market crash.
People watching.
Okay, so
Okay. Anyhow,
someone wanted you to die. Hope you.
they really wanted my demise, and I remember getting phone calls from them and such hateful things being said, and it was hurtful and difficult. And I put it in God's hands. I did pray about it. Well, God ended up, not that I was more righteous necessarily, but God ended up turning everything around. And even at my son's wedding, this person ended up being there. And during the wedding, we're saying just snide remarks about me and just mean things.
Wow.
It was just terrible.
Your sister's got to stop.
Yeah.
She just needs to stop.
So, long story short is God has redeemed my life, but this particular person lost everything. They were, on the road to making millions of dollars. They're going to retire and everything was going to be wonderful. And they lost everything. And I think God showed favor towards me. Now, does it mean that I was more righteous? No. But I do think that God answers prayers. And we see that in the story of, Nehemiah.
This might fit. Why do you think God tells us really specifically many times, let me take revenge?
Right.
You don't worry about that. Why is that so important?
I don't know exactly, except that I think it's a big form of trust. It's saying, I trust you, God. I'm feeling attacked. I trust you. I trust you to be my defender. It would be the same as provision, right? We're trusting God to provide for us financially. We trust God with the things that are important to us. So I think it kind of falls in the same place, at least in my mind.
It's biblical.
Biblical.
I think also if we're plotting revenge all the time, where our mind is not on the things of God and our heart is being purchased, is being spent in things that are taken. He even says if you got something against your brother, deal with it right now. In other words, don't. Negative energy. I remember Judge advising one of our friends, take care of this lawsuit as fast as you can.
Right.
Because I just think there's a lot of wisdom in it. Letting
Well,
God
yeah.
handle that stuff.
The Bible even says that, Frank, right?
Yeah.
It says if your accuser's taking you to court, on your way there, settle with them,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Because you don't know what that judge is going to do. You think that you're right and justice is going to happen, but it doesn't always happen that way.
And I don't think you're wrong, Frank, praying for God to use you for his judgment like you did.
Let's go, baby.
Use me, Lord.
Execute judgment through me.
Give me the sword.
Yeah,
Put me in
I want to
front.
be part of helping you.
Yeah.
The big thing is you end up getting focused on the score, right? You're looking at the scoreboard and you're saying, they wronged me. And even if you just don't let it go, if you're not even actively planning revenge, if you're just waiting for them to fall up, you're staring at the scoreboard. What's that doing to you? What's that doing to all the time and relationships you could be building, your relationship with the Lord? When he says the rain's going to fall on the just and the unjust, the earthly vengeance may never come. They could win the lottery, live out the rest of their days super happy, What's that to you except for pain and all these ideas about like karma and nonsense up in your mind? It's just a distraction.
Yeah. My job is love.
And revenge is burdensome.
Exactly.
It's really very burdensome. Hate is burdensome. I used to enjoy talking to people in court many times about just, step back from this and think about, say in a custody dispute or something, you both love your child. And I know you're angry with each other and I know you don't like each other.
Right.
But step back and think about what you're doing and why. And even disputes, lawsuits and stuff are that way. Many times it takes that third party. Even with us, that's why we have brothers that we go to for good advice. Because sometimes it takes a third party to come in and say, think about it, step back a little bit and look at what's happening. Because it is burdensome and it takes up time and energy. It just does. And that's why I said what I did. I've told people many times, you can't put a price on settling your disputes. And that goes for everyday disputes too. They're a burden on your soul. And you can't put a price on settling that case, settling that divorce, settling that dispute. You can't put a price on that because until it's settled, you won't know the relief that you have.
That's true.
A burden.
Pure wisdom.
It's just absolutely. And I've been figuring that out now.
Yeah.
A bird in hand on everything. I'm taking it everywhere. I'm trying to think of examples to share. They are coming to mind. I just know almost weekly.
Yeah,
It's
and
been
if
on
you-
my mind. It's been sometimes for my wife's like, dude, you're cutting too short. And I say, you can't sit and make that kind of a risk, even if it feels like a little risk. Just look at this right now. I have a 0% chance of getting screwed. Even if I have a 1% chance of losing it all for doubling it, say.
So you're like
Just get out.
you're like a day trader for life. Life.
No.
It's like you're just going to take your wins anytime you see them and not worry about long runs.
Okay.
Oh, don't turn this into a.
No, I'm trying to understand.
I was saying I'm being safer. in this.
I'm just saying.
How's your crypto doing?
Take
None of that.
take the lump sum payment when you win the lottery. Who wants to get paid over all those years, right?
Yeah, especially when you're my age.
Hey, against inflation and car accidents, you might as well take it now.
Yeah.
Might as well take it now.
Well, let's go. Let's
Yeah,
read
let's
the next
read-
two verses.
There you go.
It says, so he says all this, and then he says, in the presence of his associates, so Sanballat saying this in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, what are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what they are building, even if a fox climbed upon it, it would break down their walls of stone. So here they got these enemies of the Jews are ridiculing them. And remember, last week we looked at it. These are goldsmiths, perfume makers. This is not their job, right? And they have to feel very insecure about, are we doing this right? Are we making this happen the way it should? And now you have this enemy, and they come with this display of majesty and might. They ride up with their army and all their glory, and they say from their prideful position, what are they doing? The feeble Jews. In other words, they've always been weak. They were a conquered people. So the point was to attempt to discourage them. Because if you can discourage somebody, that's the battle right there. If you get them discouraged, that's the battle. So how do you fight? So let's say we're going to tell one another, or we're going to tell somebody who's watching here, we're going to say, this is how, as a Christian, this is how I fight discouragement. How do you fight it? Because we've all been there, right? We all get discouraged.
I couldn't think there's a pastor who would advocate what Nehemiah says next.
What's he say?
Oh, after that? I was going to get to that, but go ahead, let's read it.
Hear, O our God, how we are despised. Return their reproach on their own heads and give them up to plunder in a land of captivity. Do not forgive them their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out before you, for they have demoralized the builders. So he's praying a curse.
Right.
Who would advocate doing that?
So in context,
That's Nehemiah praying to God, saying,
and I don't feel like he's doing it for himself. I feel like he's talking to God about, like, God, I mean, think about it. God, you gave this to me to do. You made everything happen right, and we're doing it. And now someone else is poo-pooing on your parade. I don't think it's like, oh, we've been offended, as a people, and, do bad things to them because they are offending us. I think that he's defending God's plan and saying, okay, God, look at
That's a
this.
good insight.
Go get him.
Yeah,
But I don't know. That's just one way. It just,
I think you're right. I think that I'm not so sure that prayer isn't appropriate, because what he's saying is that get them off their high horse.
in context.
Get them off their high horse. You need to step in and help us. We're doing what you told us to do. And look what they're doing to us.
So it was
They're
a righteous
persecuting us
prayer.
for what we're doing. Yeah, it really was.
Because in the New Testament, we're told, pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, right?
Turn the cheek.
Do good to those who
If they take
harm
your
you.
coat,
That was
give
a
them your-
different mindset then, though, in the Old Testament. It really was.
Well,
by
so-
God, Jesus.
Well, so to answer your question,
I'm trying to figure out how do you marry the two?
Yeah, I don't understand it.
I don't know how you marry it, but to your first question, you said, how can you tell people online how you as a Christian would do? I would do what you said the New Testament constantly teaches, which is, look, you look outward and pray for others. I mean, it's amazing how much, when you're lifting up other people's needs in prayers, how much your needs are just taken care of. I mean, that's been my experience.
Well, in line with the New Testament and defending Frank's position, maybe he should have said, Lord, pray for them to understand what we're doing. Pray for them to encourage us.
Yeah, I mean, Sanballat, Tobiah, the Ammonites, the Arabs, all these groups were enemies of the Jews. They didn't want the Jews to succeed, right? They attempt, let's just discourage them. If we show this display of might and power, we've got it together, and we just make them feel like fools and idiots, well, they'll stop, right? And they didn't stop. We see later that they took heart and actually continued. So I'm thinking, well, what does it take? And I think, to your point, or one of you said, maybe the way we fight discouragement is to know that God is in what we're attempting to do.
I think always knowing that we're doing, like people say, am I in God's will? He was completely doing what he was supposed to do. And it's not an enemy on this example I have, but, it's very clear for years we were supposed to start a church. And for some reason, we don't know why yet, but in Old Town Clovis in California, I don't know where you're watching from, but it's nothing special, and we think we should be there. And so we start in the middle of COVID outside, and we're starting a church, and we all belong to big churches, and
It's easy.
maybe we're too old.
Right. Maybe we're, I'm not sure why you looked at me.
I don't know. In our twilight years, why would we start a
That's
church?
because we have people like Devin who are going to take over.
That's right. Well, so the point is this, other people that are at other churches are like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, how many people showed up? So, we had like 150 people. Oh, and one guy told me, you know what? We have 1,100 in our children's ministry. And I was like, you're a pastor. We're telling you the good things God's doing in this area in Clovis. And it's almost like he's just become an enemy, or maybe it's a jealousy. But they're part of the kingdom, and they're throwing rocks at something that God's doing. Now, I could have been completely discouraged. I immediately realized something's wrong with their heart. And I felt this overwhelming, no, you guys are doing what God told you to do.
Did you?
So it doesn't matter.
Right.
Eric, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, I'd be carrying that burden, Bill.
There's not even 1,100 people that live in your town.
Yeah. You have 100 people in your town. That's all right.
Did you pray for that person that God would never forgive their iniquity?
No,
and
I did not want to
cast
hear
curses upon
That's
his
right.
family
Exactly.
and his
Keep
progeny.
calls and all that. No, I just said that's amazing that there's that many kids
Hey, it's a
hearing
fun-
the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still sucks. You would expect more support.
Well, that
So if
we
anybody
could go down
wants,
that road,
compet-
but
instead
that's
so if anyone
competition,
wants
it's
to
just-
text me offline, I'll tell you who it is. No, I would not.
so. And that can be discouraging, right?
Yeah, and that's not even an enemy, as your question was, has the enemy done this? But if you're firm in who you are and what you're doing because you're actually listening to God, I only hear good things about all your stuff, Judge, but I'm sure you've had some negative experience when God said, look, start sharing this. But it's got to be a shock being a judge and knowing all the crap you have to deal with and stuff in your life for people to see you sharing the word every day like that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, and the way I've dealt with it is, and we've talked about this, let your actions prove what's happened to you.
Right.
Let your actions just prove what's happened to you. That's why I never miss. That's why I try and live my life better. Sure, there was a lot of doubters and a lot of negative, like, what the hell,
Yeah.
What I like about what you're doing is, there's a quote from Skip Heitzig, who is a pastor in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He said this. He said, to proclaim the gospel but not live it is hypocrisy.
Right. Absolutely.
But then he says, to live it and not proclaim it is cruelty. So what he's saying
that's
there is, if you live out your faith, but you're kind of like this closet Christian, where you're just trying to be a good person, but you're never saying why you are this way, you're withholding the life-giving message of the gospel.
Wow.
And I thought, that's really powerful.
And the beauty of that is that we've talked about this before. When the Holy Spirit enters in you and tells you to do something, you just do it. You've asked me, I remember distinctly when you asked me, when did you start doing this? And Why did you start doing it? And I can't answer that question. Something happened to me when the Holy Spirit came into me that night that I've shared with you before, and I just started doing it. And that was my proclamation to the world.
And what I like about what you're
Well,
doing,
he sent it to his friends in a text,
Right.
the verse and what he learned from it, and then we start posting it places,
Right.
and now it's going all over.
Yeah, it's
People
daily devotion.
aren't part of our deal tell me, oh, I know you. Hey, do you know the judge? Yeah, he's in our group. Oh, I read his stuff every day.
And how I
And
know
I'm
that
like,
what God's done in him is so real and powerful is it changed how you lived. You became a different person. You weren't as crotchety, and you were kinder, and I mean, you became a different person. But then you didn't just like become a different person. You started proclaiming why you're a different person. I think that's powerful.
Tell us how you really used to feel about the judge.
Well, and the big bonus here is through that it attracted Kat, which is the best part
Exactly.
of his life.
Exactly.
She's amazing.
Sure.
And your life changes when you live with the word. It really does. And I find myself, and Kat and I have discussed this, I'm a better husband. I'm a better person, and she feels it every day.
That's so cool. So we've identified a couple things, right? So for anybody who's watching, I just want to so it's not just a bunch of guys talking.
Yeah.
So we said, all right, well, you got to first of all identify, am I in the will of God? Am I doing what God wants me to do, right? Secondly, we just said what Judge does every day. We're going to be in the Word, and we're going to allow the Word of God to do the work of God in us. So discouragement happens when we're out of the Word. We're not listening to God's voice through the Bible.
That's true.
And praying. Mention that too, right? So those three things for me that's how I battle discouragement, because there are lots of things to be discouraged about. But quoting the promises of God pushes against the discouragement.
You really do have a different attitude about the world too. We know what's going on, and we talk politics sometimes off the camera, but it doesn't seem to bother you quite as much as some of those people that just get so wrapped up.
Right.
Because God's got this.
Well, because the answer isn't the Republicans. The answer isn't the Democrats. The answer for sure isn't the president.
Yeah.
The answer is Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it's really
Amen.
sad that we don't see more of that, in this country.
Well, I think we're pretty close to
All right, well, that was,
So
hopefully we got one nugget. That's good. Well, I agree, the whole idea of discouragement. Still get discouraged, but if you know you're firmly in God's will and doing what you've heard him say, really hard you don't even feel the arrows. It's like stuff doesn't really matter. I find when we're busy doing stuff like this and all the groups and working with people, and then stuff happens discouraging in my career, it's like a non
It's not as bad.
problem
It's not as bad.
at all, because it's like God's got this. Are you doing what I told you to do? Yes. So
That's kind of what I was saying to Frank. It's like there's a big scoreboard, right? With the game, right? You watch a football game score. That's just on, kind of somewhere, and you're not paying attention to it. You're out making food or whatever. It doesn't really matter what's going on. But if you're sitting there and you're so enveloped in what's going on, and you're watching every little piece of everything, not even just scores, but runs here and there, you'll get so ingrained in it, and you get anxious. But if you're just not paying attention and you say, that's going on, that doesn't affect me. Because I'm over here having this relationship.
that's how he's beating you at fantasy football. He's not. He's not.
I'm just in too many leagues, so I'm looking at too many scoreboards.
Fantasy football has really helped
Too
me
many scoreboards.
work through this particular issue. I used to have two favorite teams. Minnesota Vikings still is my favorite team, and they disappoint me every year. But I'm a Minnesota Viking fan. My second favorite team was anybody who played against the 49ers.
That is my second favorite team as well.
And I discovered that I'm okay if the 49ers win, because Deebo Samuels and Ayuk are both on my fantasy team. And so if they do well, I do well. All right,
All right.
with that.
Well, hopefully we've left you with some wisdom there.
Right,
about your
That was
fantasy team.
that was the last bit of nonsense. We're sorry.
All right. Well, we're going to finish our cigar, but thank you for joining us. And we have a special request when we're done with Nehemiah. Bill says Nehemiah is a little slow, a little boring. He wants us to dig in deep in Revelations when we're done.
Oh, I'd love to go through Revelation.
So, keep watching with us while we get through Nehemiah. And let's start there. Let's unpack Revelations.
All right.
We might have to expand this to an hour, hour and a half.
Well, we might have to speed read through Nehemiah to get there in quick enough time that we remember that we're going to go through Nehemiah.
We know.
Because some of us old people here.
We know Revelations is next, so we'll be there. So stick with us. We'll finally get there. A lot of people have fun with that one. Again, share with your
Share with
friends. Thank
everybody.
you so much.